Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Alpine Riflecraft. Alpine Riflecraft is a Canadian firearms company that is redefining what an ultralight mountain hunting rifle should be. Their flagship product, the Zenith rifle, starts at 4.5 pounds and is the lightest carbon-barreled bolt action on the market today. Alpine Riflecraft rifles are 100% engineered, designed, and manufactured in Canada. To learn more, visit their website at alpineriflecraft.ca. Hey everyone, I just wanted to jump on here real quick and tell you about the new rewards program we launched on Spike Camp. This is a totally free perk for all members of the Spike Camp community. You all are eligible to be in the rewards program. You collect points for the program just simply by being active on Spike Camp. So things like commenting on posts, liking posts, making your own, attending our live streams, referring people to Spike Camp. We've got a whole bunch of different ways you can collect points. Each thing's got different number of points you get depending on what you do. It's all on the platform. If you want to read the details and see all this stuff, head to the rewards program discussion space on Spike Camp, and then you'll have all the details. You'll see your rankings in terms of how many points you have, all that fun stuff. But to kick things off, we've got an incredible prize. This was donated by our friend Don Lynham, and it's a Browning T-Bolt 22 long rifle. It comes with a Bushnell 3-9 scope. I think that's a rimfire scope, and it also comes with scope mounts. So this is a $1,500 value prize pack. We're giving this away totally free. It was generously donated for the sake of these programs. So thank you, Don. And we're drawing it on June 1st. So simply put, the more points you get for the rewards program, the more entries you get to this prize. So if you've got 50 points, you get 50 entries. If you got 100 points, you get 100 entries. So jump on Spike Camp, check it out, get engaged. Let us know if you have any questions, but appreciate your support.
It's an honor and a pleasure to welcome Joseph von Benedikt to the show. Joseph is a very well-respected personality in the outdoor world. He's an avid hunter, a gun writer, former big game guide, competitive shooter, and host of the Backcountry Hunting podcast. Joseph, welcome to Spike Camp.
Hey, thanks. It's an honor to be here.
Well, that's great. I know you and I have been chatting for a couple of months here, trying to line it up, and your schedule has been very busy with some hunts that you've been doing. So we're gonna, if time permits, we're gonna pick away at those a little later on in the interview. So maybe before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, could you give our audience a little background on yourself? I think, like, where'd you grow up? How'd you get into hunting and shooting?
Sure. Well, I grew up in southern Utah, out in the sticks. I mean, honest to goodness, middle of nowhere. I was 100 miles from a stoplight or supermarket. So people know that of the two populated corners of southern Utah, there's St. George on the one side, and then Monticello and Blanding and all that on the other side. I was halfway between. And it was God's country as far as hunting and just running free, great fishing, so forth. I grew up punching cows for the great-grandson of the man who settled that area 100 and some odd years before that. Yeah. And just grew up hunting, fishing, doing a lot of work with horses and cattle, and got into competitive shooting, as you mentioned, when I was 14, and did pretty well with that. I still like to dabble with it. Whatever disciplines I can do, I really enjoy that. I started writing in college and publishing, and one thing led to another. And so I make my living now as a full-time outdoor writer, gun writer. It's been a lot of water under the bridge. Yeah. I guided 9 years, and it's been a fun ride.
Well, that's awesome. The term gun writer would be a dream job if I could only possess the writing skills and the knowledge that's required for that. But I've been a huge fan. So Blake, you'll have to nudge me if I get a little too deep with all my commendations for Joseph, but his work is outstanding, and I find it funny when I'm trying to find something, a piece of information that I can't find. I'll search the whatever it is I'm looking for, and more often than not, your articles pop up. So you're either a real solid writer, or you've got some pretty good SEO going there for search engines. But all kidding aside, yeah, it's great. Your content's always been super detailed, and we love that. So back to the you're growing up. Did you was your family were all hunters then and stuff, so it came naturally?
It skipped a generation. So my dad immigrated from Europe in the late 60s. My last name, von Benedikt, you probably guessed it's either German or Austrian. Well, he claims the Austrian-Hungarian Empire is where his roots are from.
Okay.
And he was born during World War II and grew up during the aftermath of the war, has a lot of horror stories about that. He's got starvation marks still on his body where the pigment's lacking and so forth. He really got put through the ringer as a child.
Yeah.
And he never did get into hunting. But my grandfather, his dad, was real serious about hunting. He hunted wild boars in the Black Forest, red deer, the whole works. And on my mom's side, my grandfather was a real serious hunter as well. So it was in my blood, and I just picked it up as soon as I could. Had to learn a lot the hard way, just kind of doing it on my own. But I had a couple of good pals whose fathers mentored me a lot too, so it made a big difference.
Yeah, it's always good if you've got a mentor of some sort, just to guide you along. And in today's world, with all the adult onset hunters, which has become sort of a very popular term these days, I kind of feel sorry for folks like that, just because it's you think of the learning curve as a hunter growing up, and all the little tidbits that you'd get from your father, grandfather, uncle, whoever it was that you were hunting with. I kind of feel sorry for people like that. It just takes so long, though. It's a long road for sure.
It is, and it can be. Yep. But on the flip side, just like I always envy somebody going to Africa for the first time, because they're going to see it for the first time. Such a special thing, Adult onset hunters probably appreciate the joy of learning more than we all did as kids. So I don't know. Maybe there's a silver lining.
Well, speaking of Africa, I leave Thursday morning for my first trip to Africa. So
outstanding. Yep, I envy you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. How many times have you been?
9 or 10. I'd have to go back and look.
Wow, that's impressive. Well, I'm super excited. I'm ready to go. My wife she's tagging along. She's not a hunter, but I think I've answered no less than 35 opinions of what she should wear, and out with us in the Jeep today. She's packing and unpacking right now. So anyway, enough about me. We're here to talk about you. So the guiding then, was that in Utah when you were younger?
Yeah, the bulk of it was, although I got started in Montana in the Bitterroot Range. I started guiding for Jeff Lang, who at the time owned an outfit called Continental Divide Outfitters in the Bitterroot. We transitioned. My brother and I opened an outfitting business in southern Utah, and we did a lot of rifle stuff. Back then, you could still get a tag pretty easy in Utah, and even the draw tags took you 3 or 4 years to get. And funny enough, we started specializing in traditional bow hunters. So we took a lot of long bow hunters and recurve hunters out for elk.
Wow. Yeah, that's a challenging way to hunt for sure. The stick hunters, boy, I don't know. I've been a gun guy my entire life, and I think I held a bow a couple times, but I look at the training and dedication those guys have, and it's just outstanding. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I bet. Well, tonight, one of the main things I wanted to do, as I mentioned to you on the phone earlier this afternoon, we just did a series a few weeks back on mountain rifles. The majority of our audience here at Spike Camp are Western hunters, primarily Western Canada. We're starting to get an audience base in the U.S. as well, but a lot of our guys and gals are sheep hunters and goat hunters and alpine hunters in general. So what I thought would be a fun little exercise would be to get your perspective on what Joseph would consider the ultimate lightweight mountain rifle for sheep and deer-sized game, shooting out to distances of around, say that 500-600 yard mark. And the way I think we'll play it is I'll basically walk through the various components, and you can tell us what your preferences are and kind of why you like that stuff. So if you're ready, let's do it.
Fun. Let's do it.
All right. So the big question obviously is going to be what would your caliber choices look like for that gun?
Now you're throwing me for a curve. You said rifle.
Okay, yeah. So it's good. Yeah, sorry.
But that's okay. Often the caliber choice your choice of cartridge should come first, because that determines sometimes what action type and size you get. So let me ask a couple questions. Are we talking elk, moose, and the bigger bears, or are we mostly focusing on deer, sheep, black bear, and so forth up to elk?
Yeah, I'd say up to elk. So primarily deer size game and in that range.
Sure. Okay. So my all-time favorite choice would be a cartridge called the 280 Ackley Improved. And the gun guys among your followers will know that cartridge, right? Especially if you're a hand loader. It's just a terrific cartridge. It's nominally a 7mm. It'll shoot the heavy bullets, those 168 grain bullets up to 175 grainers at pretty useful velocities, 2,800 to 2,900 feet per second. Doesn't kick a lot. You can keep 5 rounds in the magazine rather than 3 in a Magnum 7mm, because it's based on the 280 Remington cartridge, and is a little more efficient than the 7 Rem Mag or 7 PRC and so forth. So your barrel life is going to be really long. So low recoil, great efficiency, lots of round on tap, naturally inherently accurate. It's just a really good cartridge. It's a little obscure. And, with you guys being in Canada and probably a good percentage of your followers being in Canada, it may be somewhat hard to find. So if you're not a hand loader, then I would default to the 7mm PRC. I know it's a pretty new cartridge, but holy smokes, it is outstanding. I like to say I believe it's the best 7mm Magnum cartridge ever engineered. And I don't mean that lightly. I've been a student of ballistics and cartridge design, bullet forensics, since I can remember. Literally in my early teens, I was digging bullets out of coffee cans full of sand that I was shooting them into. So the 7 PRC is a perfect balance of efficiency, ideal chamber design for accuracy, rifling twist rate fast enough to stabilize the very best of our modern long range hunting bullets. Whether you like to shoot long range game or not, or think you're that, have that capability, it never hurts to have a bullet that maximizes your retained velocity and retained energy and minimizes your wind drift, even if you're just shooting 250 yards. Those are beneficial factors, right? So shooting those modern bullets can be a really good thing. What else? I've tried a bunch of different 7mm PRC rifles. I've tested a lot of them, and I have yet to find one that doesn't shoot really well, and most of them shoot beyond really well. And I may have a little bit of personal affinity to it as well, because my oldest daughter, who was 13 at the time, shot a black bear with one about 8 months before the cartridge was announced. Unknown to any of us at the time, she was the first person not just to take a black bear with a 7mm PRC, but to take any big game animal with a 7mm PRC. Wow. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That's very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. That the 7 PRC. Well, sorry, back to the 280 Ackley. 280 Ackley is very popular in Western Canada. I've got one in my safe. My son Blake here, I just got him last year into a 280 Ackley, and he shot his first elk. Frontal shot at, 100 yards or so in the chest with 140 grain Nosler AccuBond, and that elk took 2 steps and was dead before it hit the ground. So it's a fan favorite up here for sure. And
awesome.
I'll say this: I think you'll see in BC in particular, there's a lot of 7mm caliber rifles. Whether the 7 SOM actually had a pretty big return back into popularity here a few years ago before the 7 PRC. was announced. And so the 280 Ackley was sort of the king of the mountain as far as the 7Ms go, at least in British Columbia. So it's very popular out here. There's a ton of custom gunsmiths or custom builders, gunsmiths here, and there's a lot. So I have a good friend who I was chatting with today, and I was asking him, I said, what would you like me to ask Joseph tonight? And he says, well, he's a big fan of the 280. So I'm looking forward to hearing him talk about that. So
it just warms my heart to hear all this. That's outstanding. And you know, the funny thing is, it's so popular for very good reasons. Nobody has ever tried that cartridge and been disappointed.
No, exactly. So you touched on it a little bit there with your overview on it, but today's bullet choices for pretty much any mountain rifle in 7mm, it's the whole spectrum. What are your thoughts on that? Where would you land with bullet weight, bullet style, like monolithic or bonded? What would you do?
You know, I have a little different approach to choosing a hunting bullet than a lot of today's so-called precision hunters, right? Before I hunt with the bullet, I need to know that it will do the task I'm setting out to do with it. If you're hunting deer and sheep-sized game, that's not a big deal. But if you're adding potentially big black bears, let's call them 400 pounds, elk, 700-800 pound animals, then you need to know that your bullet will penetrate adequately and hold together if it hits those big, heavy bones those animals are known for, right? If you have to take a quartering 2-shot, break a big shoulder bone, still get into the vitals through both lungs. Yeah, so I choose bullet construction first, and then I test suitable bullets for accuracy in the particular rifle I'm going to be hunting with. I tend to like heavy for caliber bullets. So specifics in the 280 Ackley Improved, I really like the 155 grain Federal Terminal Ascent bullet. Just a great bonded core bullet. It's kind of a hybrid. The rear half is mono metal, so it can't pancake, it can't fragment to nothing on impact. I actually would love to see Federal add the 170 grain version that they've engineered for the 7mm PRC into the 280 Ackley line, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. Hopefully at some point when supply catches up with demand, we'll be able to get those 170s as components for those of us who want to hand load them. I think probably some of the best component bullets available on the market for hand loaders and in factory ammo too would be the 160 grain Nosler AccuBond. I like the 140 that you used on your elk, Blake, but it's the lightest I would use on an elk. I really prefer something a little bit heavier, and the 160 is outstanding for elk. And then, of course, there's the Barnes bullets. The LRX, I've used the 139 grain LRX on a ton of stuff. A friend of mine shot a big bison at 605 yards broadside with that bullet in a 280 Ackley. 139 grainer achieved full penetration, was found against the hide on the eye side. Really, really good bullet. And of course, Barnes has just introduced a factory 280 Ackley load with 152 grain LRX that's engineered specifically for that cartridge. That's another fantastic one. All that said, if I was hunting close and never shooting past 300 yards, I would use a 175 grain controlled expansion lead core bullet, either a Swift A-frame or a Nosler partition. If you could find them, something like a trophy bonded bear claw, they made a 175 grain version of that. A pretty awesome bullet. Not aerodynamic, but still awesome at close range.
Sure. Question back to the Federal Terminal Ascent bullet. Is that somebody mentioned? I think you may have been on a podcast with Ron Spomer about that. Is that a descendant of? Did they buy? Was it Swift A-frames or something along those lines, or is that something they developed?
It was the trophy bonded bear claw that they bought from
the bear claw. Okay.
Yep, from the developer who was Jack Carter. He generated the trophy bonded bear claw because there weren't any bullets that were performing up to his standards, what he thought they should do. And it became kind of a benchmark, the bullet by which all other dangerous game mushrooming bullets were judged for a while. Then Federal bought them out, and they developed the trophy bonded tip, which is a non-dangerous game bullet, but it has the same type of construction with the addition of a polymer tip. And then they made it sleeker and more aerodynamic, and that version is called the Terminal Ascent.
Okay. Yeah, they seem to be extremely popular, and from what I understand, very accurate too. Easy to load for, right?
They can be, yeah. They're not as easy to get, perfect accuracy out of as a Barnes LRX or even a Nosler AccuBond, but when you get it right, they do shoot really well.
Right on. Have you played with the hammer bullets?
I have. In fact, I took a 7mm PRC built by Weatherby, believe it or not, to New Zealand. I got back just 4 days ago, and I shot 3 animals with it there. I shot a bull tar, a fallow deer, and a chamois, all with a 177 grain custom hammer bullet that's just made for Weatherby for their line of 7MMs.
Okay, so is it similar to their HHT then in design, or?
Yeah, I would think so. It doesn't have a plastic tip, polymer tip on it, right? It's just a hollow point. But I think it performs about the same. It has the 4 pedals that open up, shear off, and then kind of spiral away, create their own wound channels and so forth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the hammer bullets seem to be really taking a foothold in the hand loader world. A lot of guys, I know a lot of folks here in Canada are using them. I've got a bunch. I haven't shot anything with them yet, but I've got them for a bunch of different rifles, and I'm going to be trying to build up a load for sheep hunting with the hammer this year. I'm going to try them. I love the design.
Yeah.
I think they're they've kind of set a new benchmark with the I can't remember what they call the rings on the side. They've got a special term for those.
Yeah, they're proprietary cannelers, those round bottom grooves around them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're real good bullets. I think they're crazy accurate because they're lathe turned. There's almost no way for an inconsistency to be in that bullet. So that's been a big thing and they're easy to load for accuracy. And then the other is they were available all through COVID when nobody else was, flooding the market with bullets. And so I think Hammer just probably serendipitously timed that just right. A lot of people tried their bullets because they couldn't find anything else and were beautifully surprised at how good they are. Yeah, they are just ghastly expensive though.
Oh, well, wait till you add Canadian foreign exchange and shipping and taxes and duty on it. I feel like I'm shooting gold bullion out the end of my rifle when I have them, but
nice.
I'll say this about them too. There's they're still like they're quickly growing as a company, but the level of service that you get as a customer with Hammer it's just like you're dealing with a mom and pop shop. You can send Steve Davis an email and he actually returns it usually within a day or so. And then when you place an order, I just did here a couple of weeks ago. I placed an order, paid the taxes and duty and whatnot on it, but less than 5 business days, I had those bullets sitting in my mailbox here in Vancouver. So, hats off to them. Hopefully that continues as they grow their business. And then one of our guests also, for sure. One of our guests just mentioned too that they do something a little bit unique with their sample packs that they'll send you as well, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you want to try like a simple ladder test, you can order the small pack, which is kind of neat.
Sure.
Okay.
And I've had similar experiences as far as the customer service goes. It's been stellar.
Yeah. And Steve is, he's a really nice guy. And so far, very impressed with them. All right. So next question then, what would you be shooting for in a mountain rifle as far as total weight with a scope on it? What's ideal weight for you?
Well, Jack O'Connor, who is probably, I like to think of him as the godfather of mountain hunters, wrote on more than one occasion that 7.5 pounds going up the mountain is just right. And he wasn't wrong then, and he's still not wrong today. However, with our modern scopes that have some features that just make us much more capable hunters, specifically that wonderful dial-up turret, the zero stop, possibly a side focus parallax knob on the side, and so forth. It's really hard to find a premium lightweight scope with those features. About as light as you can get is 18 ounces, maybe 16 if you go with the Swarovski Z5 and the 3.5 to 18 by 42. But keep in mind, O'Connor was shooting scopes that weighed a half pound or less, 6 to 8 ounces, a little 2.5 power fixed or a 4 power fixed. So he had a lot easier time keeping his rifle at that 7.5 pound weight when he's starting with a 6.5 pound gun. On the plus side, we have lighter rifles available to us now. And I believe we can even get too light. If you go with something like a 4.5 pound ultra lightweight, you put a little scope on it, it gets hard to shoot them well. So pretty much my approach is to try and get a rifle that's somewhere in about 6 pounds. Then with some good lightweight tally mounts, that ring combined base mount that's so strong and not very expensive, and maybe a 19 ounce scope like Leupold's VX5 HD, and the 3 to 15 is kind of my go-to. That rifle will end up right about 7.5 pounds. And then if I want to, I can throw like an 8 ounce titanium suppressor on it, and I'm still at 8 pounds going up the mountain. I can deal with that.
For sure. Yeah. So that's one thing we're unable to do is play with suppressors up here. So I think that's you kind of hit the nail on the head with the weight. I think if you're looking at the Leupold line of scopes, I think they've really changed the game in the last few years with that zero lock system. They've been durable. I haven't heard of really that many issues with them. I run the exact same scope as you mentioned, and I also run on some of my I guess less expensive rifles that I'll take out varmint hunting or spare rifles. I run their VX3 in I think 4.5 to 14, I think, and that's a light scope too. I think it's 13 or 14 ounces or something, but they hold zero. That zero lock is there every time you need it. It's awesome.
That's a great scope as well, no doubt.
For sure. Okay, so this is also I always call these the Ford, Dodge, or GM question, but what's your preferred action? Controlled round feed or a push feed for this rifle?
It depends on the purpose. If there's any chance I'm going to be hunting dangerous game with that rifle, I want a controlled feed action. And that just goes back, it's not that a controlled feed action is more reliable in itself than a really good push feed action that's properly tuned. But what they do is they eliminate a lot of human potential for errors, for introducing errors into that system. So, when things get real scary, the puppy in your brain starts to drive and we just don't function as cleanly as we should. So anything that will help me get the job done without mistakes at the moment of truth is important to me. All that said, for the most part, push feed actions tend to be a little more accurate than most controlled feed guns. That's a big generality, right? And there are always exceptions, but they have fewer moving parts and lighter moving parts in the firing mechanism, the firing pin mechanism, bolt shroud, cocking piece, all that. And so less vibration, less moving parts, less weight in the moving parts tends to just tame vibrations and enhance consistency a little bit. So all that is a big, long, jumbled up way of saying, you can't make me pick one.
I didn't think so.
So if my traditional favorite in the controlled feed actions is a Model 70. Grew up with a pre-64 Model 70, just love it. I count on them. I have faith in them. Defiance actions in the custom world has been amazing. I've got some truly spectacular rifles built on Defiance actions, but Lone Peak and Bighorn actions, a lot of those others, they're really good actions. Stiller makes a great action. So I should probably just cut to the chase here. I've been using a rifle. It's one of Proof Research's new Ascension models. They introduced it just over a year ago at SHOT Show, and then they finally started shipping early this year, and I got one for testing in 7mm PRC. It's a titanium Zermatt action with a controlled feed extractor in it. So it's the best of all the worlds. You get the accuracy of the traditional push feed cocking mechanism. You get the lightweight of titanium. You get the controlled feed to help you not screw up when the chips are down, right? And it doesn't hurt that this is, I believe, the single most accurate hunting rifle I've ever fired in my life, and it weighs 6 pounds.
Wow. Oh my goodness. What have you got for optic on that?
That one currently has a it's a VX6 HD and a 3-18 on it, I believe. And I was amazed. I started test firing ammo through it. It shoots everything into little tiny groups. I did a series of 5-shot test groups for a bullet manufacturer that's engineering a bullet specifically for the 7 PRC, and protocol was 5-shot groups only. It was shooting significantly sub half MOA 5-shot groups over and over.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And for a 6-pound rifle in a 7 PRC, that's a Magnum 7mm. Wonderful.
That's outstanding.
That's my current favorite. Ask me next week. I'll probably have a different one.
Yeah. Like me. Flavor of the month, right?
Yep.
Okay. This is another kind of Ford Chevy sort of question here. What about detachable magazine versus floor plate or blind? What are your preferences?
I don't mind a blind magazine. I will hunt with a detachable box magazine in a pinch, but I don't like to. Hands down, my favorite is a hinged floor plate. And I've got a couple of stories. I'll just give you the skeleton versions. I've lost detachable box magazines on 2 crucial hunts. And keep in mind, folks, when you lose your detachable box magazine, if you don't have another one right at hand, you now have a hard to load single shot, right?
Yeah.
So I was hunting moose in Alaska on a fly-in hunt with my good buddy Joe Kennedy 1.5 years ago, and carrying the rifle by the barrel over my shoulder. He was hiking behind me for a while. Just my backpack was heavy and I wanted to shift things up a little bit. At some point, the little latch on that box magazine caught on a strap, apparently, because we'd stopped to take a drink or something. I'd leaned my rifle against a tree and I looked over and the magazine was gone. Thankfully, I had a spare back at camp. But for a little part of that afternoon, I was packing a very hard to load 1-shooter in grizzly bear country, and I didn't like it. Right. The other time was just last fall. My daughter Audrey shot a deer and hit him good, but we had to follow him up. We jumped him and things got a little bit Western. And I was using another super accurate, wonderful rifle. It's a 7 SAUM. You mentioned that, built by Gunworks with detachable bottom, a bottom metal for detachable box magazine. And I threw up the rifle, hurried and shot and missed. It happens. Went to throw another cartridge in there and I could feel one didn't go in. So I opened the bolt again, glanced down there. My magazine was gone and it was the only one I had. And so that deer ran off laughing at me. Well, I tried to dunk a bullet into the chamber, right? We got him, but it wasn't quite as quickly as it could have been. So I don't trust detachable magazines. I tape them now. I'll put electrical tape on them to keep them in.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think we were just talking about that last weekend. Blake's got a Kimber Hunter, a couple of them, and we were out scouting for blacktail, and he pulled his rifle off his shoulder, and the magazine was just about out. So I think what we're going to rig up is I'm going to rig up either tape or I will put some Velcro tape on the side of the stock on either side with a Velcro strip around the bottom. Just may not be the do all end all, but it's it's something. It's something other than I always freak out when I have a magazine gun on my shoulder too. I'm always looking, but interesting.
For sure.
Good points. Okay, this is also fun. I love talking about this one. What about the barrel? Are you looking at carbon wrap, stainless? What length? You mentioned suppressors, so up here would be a break. What are you looking for there?
If I can afford it and it's appropriate on the rifle, I always go with the carbon fiber wrapped barrel. And there are a lot of good manufacturers out there, Bartline, Carbon 6, and others, but Proof Research has become my go-to brand just because they are so darned good. And I've had extraordinary luck with them on a bunch of different rifles. I wish I owned them all. A lot of them are just test rifles and I have to send them back, but unbelievably good barrels. The reason is I believe carbon fiber has a natural dampening effect on a barrel. So you get less vibration, less whip, less oscillation, and better across the spectrum accuracy. So with a good rifle properly built with a Proof Research barrel, carbon fiber wrap barrel, I can generally test, say, 10 different factory loads, and 8 out of 10 of them will shoot better than good enough. You take a similar rifle with a mountain weight barrel just made out of steel, and you'll get 2 or 3 that will shoot better than expectations, right? You just have a less temperamental barrel when you got the carbon fiber. They stay stiffer and more rigid as they heat. So I can get 10-shot strings out of something like a 7mm PRC and maintain accuracy where you'd never do that out of a spaghetti barrel on an ultra lightweight mountain rifle with just a steel barrel. That's not to say that good steel barrels can't be great, because they can be for sure, as long as they're built really, really well. So I love Bartline for those. I like a good Proof Research steel barrel, all steel barrel. There's a lot of good makers, but anymore, I've proven to myself unequivocally for the past 8 years that a well-built carbon fiber wrap barrel is worth the extra money. And yeah, it's going to be double. It's painful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're beautiful. They're and they're durable. Like, you set one down, and if it's on a rock or something, if you get a little nick in the carbon, you don't feel as hurt or guilty as you would with chipping the stainless barrel. So I'm with you. What are your thoughts on barrel length, especially for the 7 PRC? If you're bushwhacking and mountain hunting, what do you think there?
I used to build 24 inches on almost everything, and I wasn't a big muzzle brake guy. I started using them when I really learned to shoot long distance solo, when I wanted to be able to spot my own impact. So with the 7s and down, I can generally spot my own impacts with a properly built field position and a good muzzle brake on. If you're limited to a brake, don't go too short, because your blast gets really obnoxious. I've shot with brakes on 16-inch guns, and it's horrific. So much worse than even on a 20-inch gun. 22 is starting to get comfortable, and 24 is real comfortable. Personally, now my go-to length is 22 inches, because I can run a brake on that and it's still not real blasty, and I can put a suppressor on it, which I tend to do, and they're not so long as to be unwieldy with a nice little 6-inch titanium suppressor on there. If I know it's going to be suppressed almost all the time, I'll go with a 20-inch barrel. But for Canadians that can't, I would either do a 24-inch without a brake or a 20 to 24-inch with a brake.
Yeah, I've kind of gone to 20-inch with most of my either bush or mountain rifles for a couple of reasons. In today's world, with the optics that we have with turrets, the bullet designs that we have, all the ballistic apps and everything else, I mean, you can really pre-calculate what your maximum effective killing range should be with impact velocities and everything. So, you can get, with any of the cartridges we've talked about tonight, in my opinion, you can get to those appropriate numbers with a 20-inch barrel. Depending on the gun, I'll put a brake on it. But one of the things I like about a 20-inch barrel, where a lot of our country here in BC is very thick with bush and blowdowns and all the other crap that you encounter out on these big hunts. And I run a Kifaru gun bearer, or if it's really tight, I'll strap my gun to my pack. And I'm like 5'9", so that 20-inch barrel, when it's hanging on a gun bearer, is basically right at my shoulder, and I'm still seeing over top of that barrel. So for me, that's the number. But
nice.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I think it's different, right? I mean, if you go back 10, 15 years and you talk to, or even maybe even farther. Oh, my father was a gun nut, and if he saw a rifle with less than a 24-inch barrel, he just rolled his eyes and shook his head. He's like, "Why are you doing that?" Right?
Yep.
So,
I remember that. Yep.
absolutely. Okay, so rifle stocks for a mountain rifle. There's a lot of choices out there, and as far as design, material, negative comb, cheek risers, thumb shelf, rails, all that fun stuff. Building your dream rifle for the mountain, Joseph, what's your stock look like?
Well, first, it's not going to be a chassis. I have used a lot of chassis in competition. I like them for what they're good for, but I've just learned that in the backcountry, in the mountains, whatever, they're cold to the touch because they always have metal parts. Even the mostly composite ones do. They're usually skeletonized, so they're snagging the brush and then they're noising the brush because you're dragging metal pieces through the brush, right? I really like carbon fiber because it's light and it's rigid, and an action that's properly bedded into it, ideally with aluminum pillars, with a properly free-floated barrel, will hold its point of impact true through any weather and any heat condition. I don't care for injection molded plastic stocks because they get malleable in heat and brittle in extreme cold. You can bang a plastic stock against a tree trunk going a little too fast on your snow machine in sub-zero temperature and have it shatter, right? So even though they're better in moisture changes, they're susceptible to temperature extremes. Carbon fiber is not like that. Fiberglass is cheaper and has its place on a competition rifle, or if you're building a front country rifle that you don't care what it weighs. But carbon fiber, and I'm not a huge fan of great big bulky stocks with all kinds of angles. For me, a stock's got to still handle well enough that you can throw it up and shoot offhand quickly and instinctively, that it points naturally. The British perfected that stock type in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and you can still find the influences of those dimensions in classic stock profiles. Probably my favorite is the Proof Research Mountain Hunter, but they're not selling those as components anymore. To get one, you have to buy a Proof Research Glacier rifle or a Summit rifle. That's their entry-level rifle. Other really good ones are, actually, I really like the Peak 44 stocks being built by Weatherby's sister company. Real light. They're 20 ounces for the classic dimensioned one and 24 ounces for the one with a more vertical grip. It's one I took on a recent hunt, learned to love it. Then they're light enough, right? The Proof Research Mountain Hunter stock is 16 ounces. It's the lightest I'm aware of in a mass-produced, is custom-ish, but yes, so it's going to be carbon fiber. It's going to be elegant, and it's going to be really well bedded to that action.
Nice. So that stock you just mentioned, is it a negative comb or more of a traditional flat comb, or what does that look like?
The Proof Research one or the Peak 44 one?
The Peak.
The Peak 44 one with a little more vertical grip. That's got something of a negative comb, just a little bit. I don't put as much stock in having a negative comb as some people do. I think fraction is good. I don't think it's necessary to have a whole bunch of slope, a whole bunch of negative slope in the cheek rest area. It can actually kind of mess with your cheek well, because if you're getting your head a little bit closer in a prone position, it'll fall away and support your cheek in a different way than if you're standing and shooting offhand. So there are some, there's a balance to be found. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of it is user preference too, and your people, whatever fits you, right? Like, I'll give you an example. I'm a huge fan of the Gunworks rifle systems as well. I've got all kinds of guns. I just purchased a Gunworks Climber this past year. I'd never had one before. The stock design intrigued me, and it fit really well. This is where I think I may have made a slight error. Is I purchased that rifle in 300 PRC with a 20-inch barrel. It was good. It's one of my go-tos for mountain hunting in grizzly country.
Sure.
And started shooting at the range with it and doing some load development. And what I noticed shooting off sandbags is the vertical grip like, it's a very ergonomically friendly stock. But I think in the case of the 300 PRC in 20-inch, it's very lively on the bench. It's got a lot of jump
no
in it,
doubt.
bit of recoil. This is my error. I should have probably, went to 22 or 24. But what I found was I like to shoot at the bench when I'm testing, and even frankly in prone position, I'll keep my thumb on the on the side of the stock on the thumb shelf. But when I fire that rifle, the trigger guard tends to bite my second finger, my middle finger. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I got to be mindful of that. So I think it's a good idea to really figure out what works for the individual. And again, it's like I said, it's a personal thing, right?
It is 100%. And if you can shoot a few different rifles with different type of stocks before purchasing, that's by far the best. So go out with your friends if you can. Just a thought on that. I know a lot of modern technique teachers tell you to shoot with a relaxed shooting hand because you're less likely to torque the rifle during recoil, and your trigger control is a little more finesse in your trigger control. I had an ex, let me see if I can remember right. I believe he was an ex-Navy SEAL sniper instructor named Doug Pritchard at the FTW ranch, watching me shoot a rifle once. It's a custom 7 Remac, beautiful rifle, but I was stringing groups 1.25 inches vertically. They were invariably 1/4 inch or less horizontally. We're talking 3 and 5 shot groups both. He squatted beside me, watched me shoot a few shots, and he said, how tight are you holding that rifle? And I said, not real tight, trying to just keep a nice, comfortable, relaxed grip. And he said, give me your hand. So I held my hand up, laying there in the prone position. And he gave me a real firm handshake. And he said, hold your rifle as firm as that handshake. I said, really?
Really?
He said, yeah. He said, all this modern garbage about loose, relaxed grips is fine when you're shooting, a 16 to 22 pound PRS rifle chambered in a little mild 6mm competition cartridge. He said, Magnum rifles in hunting weights jump too much to shoot with a relaxed grip. So try it again. Hold that grip like you're giving somebody a firm handshake. And I shot a sub 1/2 inch group. And then I did it again and again. And the next day, I became the 9th shooter in history to ace a course that they put the Marine snipers through regularly, year in and year out. 9th guy in history to ever do it with that rifle using a firm handshake grip.
Wow. Good to know.
Try it.
I mean, that's how,
that might help you prevent getting wrapped on that knuckle.
It only takes once. That's what my dad used to say when you get a scope bite. It only takes once.
Yeah.
Great tip, Joseph. I'm going to give that a go. Okay. Well, this episode's going fast. We're already at 45 minutes, so I'll keep cruising on the questions. So hopefully we don't take too much more of your time.
We can stretch her out a bit if you need to. No worries.
Okay, good. I could tell you don't mind talking about guns, right? So.
Is it obvious?
Maybe a little. Yeah, maybe a little. My son's sitting there going, okay. So anyway, back to the next thing I wanted to chat a little bit about was I was going to ask you about the scopes. Now you touched on the Leopold scopes and some of the other brands there. Obviously, I think probably goes without saying, but turret or BDC reticle, what's your choice?
For a long time, I liked a good reticle, but it had to be the right reticle. And then I eventually grew out of that too. And it's just so much more precise and less to think about when things are going a little faster than your brain wants to process them. It's just better to have a turret you dial. And I don't even, for use inside 600 yards, I don't even like having some kind of a reference thing like a rangefinder that then spits out minutes of angle, or a drop chart taped to your scope or your stock that you have to refer to and then dial. I use a silver metallic Sharpie marker, and I'll crunch my ballistics, sight in at 200 yards, and I test it all the way out to 600 and further. Usually I can shoot to 1,300 yards on my local range. But once I've confirmed and validated my ballistics, I'll go in there and I'll write a 3 for 300 and a 4 for 400 and so on at the appropriate spot on my dial. The great beauty of that is you can wipe it off with a little bit of brake cleaner, carb cleaner. You can use a Sharpie, not a Sharpie marker, a dry erase marker. Just smear fresh ink all over that and then wipe it off. It'll come off. And you can update it if you change conditions. Let's say, I wanted to go hunt Kodiak Island at sea level. I can just fix my turret for that, for those different ballistic conditions. If I drew a high country mule deer hunt in Colorado and I anticipate hunting at 12,000 feet, no problem. I'll just crunch the ballistics and rewrite it on with that Sharpie marker. To 600 yards is accurate enough. And past that, I don't shoot past that as a rule, but on the few occasions I've made an exception, I always do it with plenty of time where I can reference real-time atmospheric conditions and so forth.
Sure. So just to confirm, you're writing with that Sharpie on the cap on the top. Oh yeah. So 3, 4, 5, 6 basically is all you got to do. Yeah.
And it depends on the turret itself. The Leopolds I write on the top. Some of them are taller and bigger and have, some empty space around the perimeter of the turret. You can write your numbers there. That's nice too, because you can see them without lifting your head a little bit.
Yeah. Great tip. I've never heard of anyone doing that. So that's a cool.
I call it my hillbilly custom turret system.
Yeah, it's probably it's definitely cheaper, and the turnaround time when you order one is a lot quicker. You just got to get your pen out.
It just works. Set your rangefinder to do angle compensated distance, true horizontal distance, and then dial to that, and you've pretty much solved out to 600 yards. Wind, of course, is a different matter, but
yeah, for sure. Oh, great. There's a good clip for Instagram for you, Blake, right there. Yeah. The redneck dial. That's great. You did touch on the tally rings, which again, those are a fan favorite of mine. So I'm assuming that's going to go on your mountain rifle. Are you putting their little bubble level on? Do you go that far, or do you put an aftermarket one on your scopes?
I do. I've used a lot of their little top mount bubble levels in that top half of that ring. However, they're not ideal for the way I shoot. I like a level that's on the left side, above center, and in front of the side focus knob, assuming one exists on that scope, because that way it doesn't obscure my view of the side focus parallax knob. And while I'm sighting through my scope, I can catch with the peripheral vision out of my support eye, my non-dominant eye, I can see that bubble. So I can be aiming at my target and simultaneously check to make sure that my rifle's straight up and down. You can't do that if your ring's on top of the scope. You can't do it with most of the new kind of, cutting edge bubbles that are being set into the wrist of rifle stocks, or even into the base of a lot of the rails being put on rifles now. So that cantilevered bubble off to the high left is where I like it, on the front end of my scope's main tube.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. I've got the tally bubbles on pretty much most of them, and that's the one pet peeve I have, is you got to lift your head up and look at that and then come back down.
The best ones I've found for the price, they're about $35, are by Burris. I don't care for the ones by Vortex, because the fluid in them seems to be a little too viscous, and the bubble is not real responsive in cold weather. You can tip your rifle and think you got it straight, and then that bubble slowly oozes on over. And you're like, dang it, I got to wait till... Anyway, the Burris ones are good, but the very best ones that I've used are by Holland's Signature, and they're like $80 on Amazon.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll take note of that one, because I'm gonna re-rig some of my scopes.
Sure.
Bipod. What do you run for a bipod on your rifles?
I use a little bit of everything for my day in, day out rifle testing for the articles I write. But when I go mountain hunting, I always go with a Spartan Precision Equipment Javelin Pro or Pro Hunt Tac bipod. They're 5 to 7 ounces, depending on what legs you have on them. They attach in a half second with rare earth magnets. They're a little pricey, but they're worth it. They're made of machined aluminum and high-grade carbon fiber in the UK by Rob Gearing. You're probably familiar with him. He was he was in aeronautics, aviation for most of his career, and his hobby was mountain climbing. And so he has an equipment design ethos that if it breaks, you could die. And so it can't break. And I love that about it.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a character. I follow him on Instagram, and the man is nonstop adventure. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. That's the system we run as well. And I've got the adapters on all of them. And I think if I was into competition shooting or, playing around with ELR, I'd probably obviously go with something a little more, I guess, designed for that application. But for hunting, I think it's great. You don't have to. They don't get snagged in the bush, and they're definitely they're definitely a great product. So
another really good one that weighs a bit more but has a bit more range of motion and length is the new. I'm trying to remember the name, but Gunworks brought it out recently.
Oh yeah,
and it's got a 45-degree twist-on attachment, so it comes on and off real fast. Attaches to a 1913 spec, Picatinny type rail. Works wonderfully. That's another really good bipod.
Yep. Yeah. No, I've heard great things about that one as well. Well, I'm just trying to think. That mountain rifle sounds pretty awesome. Have we missed anything? Anything you can think of or you'd want to add?
I've gone to where I like using a neoprene scope cover, and the thicker the better, because whether it's strapped to your pack or slung over your shoulder or whatnot, if you fall on it, or even if you just do like me, I mean, we're all humans. We make mistakes sometimes. To lean it against a rock and that rifle slides off and lands on the scope in a pile of gravel or whatever. A big neoprene scope cover will usually save your scope and save you from having to do a whole re-zero process. So I do like that. I like it better than caps that go right on the ends of your scope. Those things are easy to break off. And I know that from clumsy experience, right?
Sure.
Another one is a lot of people go overboard with their rifle sling, and they'll get this big cobra shaped sling that's stiff and heavy and awkward, and they'll hang cartridges in it, which makes it swing. If it swings while you're aiming in the offhand position, it pulls your aim right and left. I like a light webbing type sling with a rubberized inner surface. You can get them, for $25 if you do a little searching on Amazon. The best of the type I found are those made by Red Kettle, the M19 sling. Yep, it's a really good webbing type sling. And I think that's about it. Other than when it comes to assembling your whole setup, you mount that scope onto the rifle. It's crucial, in my opinion, to get the scope as low to the action as you can. And most of the rails, the cross slot type rails being put on rifles these days as an added benefit, are anything but. They force you to mount your rifles, up higher. They add an unnecessary joint and more screws. Take that dumb thing off. Get the lowest tallies you can use with your scope diameter, and it's almost always the low, folks. Don't let people tell you you need mediums unless you've got some gargantuan, baseball club for a scope, which sell that anyway, because it's going to make your rifle top heavy, right? Anyway, mount it close to your action. You'll get a better cheek weld. It'll be more responsive when you throw it to your shoulder for a fast shot. It'll balance so much better. Get your scope low and mount it with a simple type mounting system.
You're speaking my language. I totally agree. And again, I was raised by a couple of gun nuts, my uncle and my dad. And my dad was like, he hated rails. He shot all kinds of guns, and he always had that scope as close to the bore as he could get it. So great advice. Well, it sounds like we've covered that. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions on another topic here that, just given your career and your job and all the fun stuff you get to test, it seems pretty much every year either a bullet or a rifle company comes out with a new caliber design, and if it's marketed correctly, it'll take off like wildfire. Some of them make it, some of them don't. The case in point, a line of calibers that's made it, in my opinion, is the PRC lineup, the 3 calibers. They seem to have done a really, really good job with those. And I know you've tested and shot all of them. Would you agree that that's probably one of the bigger success stories in the last few years as far as cartridge design goes?
Absolutely. And I would go so far as to say it may be the biggest success story of a family of cartridges in all of history.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just marketing, though. As you well know, I mean, Hornady is an extremely efficient marketing machine, but
Mm-hmm.
as good as their marketing department is, sorry, Seth, the engineers are even better. Those guys are all my
For
friends, though,
sure.
right? But so they have managed, they got ahead of the curve. And the first one out was the 6.5 Creedmoor, right? It took a long time to catch on because people just hadn't quite cottoned on to the idea of a cartridge that's extremely efficient, but pushes an extremely high BC bullet, which downrange beats everything else, beats high velocity, low BC bullets every time, right?
Yeah.
High
Yeah.
barrel life, very good behavior as far as accuracy goes. And then there's some throat dimension magic in the way that the rifling lead works and the tolerances, the surplus of tolerances, which there isn't much in that whole line, that whole family of cartridges, whether it's the 6mm arc, the new 22 arc, the 6mm Creedmoor, 6.5 Creedmoor, and all three of the PRCs, they all share a chamber technology that is the next realm. They're not just an adaptation on current designs. And as such, they've absolutely changed our the future of cartridges. So
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of grateful for them because they've done some wonderful, wonderful things with that family, that whole family, and extended family of cartridges.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you said, you pointed out one of the first sort of game changer calibers was the Creedmoor, right? When it came out, the 6.5 Creedmoor. And there's a lot of dirt flung the Creedmoor's way now that, you know, the 6.5 PRC's out. But I mean, let's face it. I don't know about you. I'm a pretty diehard hand loader, and I don't think I've ever loaded a 6.5 Creedmoor, and I've had like 6, 7 of them. I've never loaded one that didn't shoot, and it was very easily accuracy was easily attainable. So I think they've done a great job with that. And if you respect that caliber and you use it appropriately, it's a fantastic weapon and, you know,
Yeah.
good system. A really good system.
Yep.
Yeah,
Within
I
its
totally
comfort
agree.
zone, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna just flip over here. We had a question from one of our members. He messaged me today on the platform. This is from good buddy Ed Thompson. He would like to hear your thoughts on the recent shift to tiny bullets for big game from the good old days of big, slow bullets. So, what are your thoughts on that?
And I'm going to be very candid and say I have not seen that shift. In my opinion,
Okay.
that shift occurred when our forefathers went from the 4570 and the 5110 and the, you know, those big cartridges to cartridges like the 253,000 Savage and the 22 Savage High Power and the 270 Winchester and so forth. I haven't seen a shift in my lifetime to tiny bullets. What I've seen is from light bullets to heavy for caliber, stretched out, super aerodynamic bullets. And maybe he's referring to the 6.5s. I'm
Could
just
be.
going to
Yeah.
run with that because that's kind of a newish phenomenon in the United States. You know, the Europeans have been using the 6.5 by 55 Swedish Mauser for well over a century with great effect. But
Yeah.
so if you say, well, you go from 30 caliber, you know, 30-06 and 30-30 and 308, 300 Win Mag down to all the 6.5s we have now, maybe that's what he's talking about. And assuming, let's just run with that. I think that would be a trend toward greater efficiency, lower recoil, and rifles that are just way easier to shoot for the consumer, plus a whole bunch of trendiness, right? There's always that trendy factor that drives people to get into something. But man, if you have something like a 6.5 Creedmoor and a 300 Winchester Magnum, there's just not much you can't do on this continent, and even, you know, for the most part around the world. the Creedmoor, the smaller cartridges, if we just lump them together, make it a lot easier to refine your marksmanship skills to a razor edge. And then you can transfer them into a heavier recoiling, more expensive to shoot cartridge pretty easily. Going the other way around, not quite so smooth a path.
Yeah, I would agree. Awesome. All right. Well, with all respect for your time here, I'm just going to finish off with a little segment we like to call the rapid fire, where I'll blast a few questions at you. The first one you answered in your first 2 sentences on this interview.
Sorry.
So yeah, that's okay. Favorite all-around caliber, .280 Ackley. Don't need to say any more. I think you probably answered this one as well at some point, but favorite classic rifle as far as the manufacturer, vintage?
Model 70 Winchester in a pre-64 rifle would have to be that one.
Okay. I was going to ask you, what caliber is it that you had? You said you mentioned it earlier.
Well, I grew up with a 270 Winchester, shot a lot of deer and elk with that. But if I had to pick just one, it would be my 300 H&H.
Oh, my favorite caliber. You hit the nail on the head. So I'll tell you, I'll derail this for a second. So a very good friend of mine who's a gunsmith here in BC, his name's Gary Falk. I have a safe full of guns, and I ended up picking up a beautiful Kimber Classic with a wood stock on it, chambered in 7 Rem mag. And we have a barrel manufacturer here in British Columbia called International Barrels, and they make competition barrels primarily. And in the last probably 5 years, they've developed spiral fluted steel barrels, mountain contour. They do carbons. They're very, very accurate. In my opinion, they're the proof of Canada,
cool.
Proof Research Canada. So Gary is just now spinning a steel barrel, spiral fluted barrel on there, in 24-inch, chambered in 300 H&H to get back to my roots. So
good man. I want to hear how that one shoots for you when you get it.
I will definitely. I'll send you some photos, and I'll be posting articles on it when I develop it. So I think it'll be in my hands when I get back from Africa in mid-May. So I'm really glad you said that. So awesome. All right. Your favorite hunt in your career as a hunter?
Ay. That one would have to take some serious introspection. It's like choosing a favorite kid. Let me go with maybe the 2 most significant. And I'm trying to pick between one. So in 2015, after a lifetime of trying, I drew a Utah bull elk tag for a really coveted area. Spent the summer scouting, all public land, DIY, went in there with my brother and a good friend and pulled out a 402 non-typical bull in a really amazing hunting situation. I jumped him like a quail in thick timber from 15 yards and shot him. One perfect shot centered and broke both shoulders as he fish hooked around me at 70 yards in dog hair thick Quakies. So it was threading the needle in every way. Such an extraordinary experience. But maybe the most, another really amazing one was 2017 in Alaska with my friend Neil Emery, drop camp hunt for moose and caribou. Shot my first caribou, real nice bull, and then a whopper of a bull moose on this 10-day period. Neil shot a real nice bull as well. And just crazy, adventurous drop camp, middle of nowhere, hardcore DIY, backcountry hunt. I don't know if I could pick between those 2.
Well, they both sound amazing. That's awesome. All right. Favorite game dish, because this is why we do it, right? What's your favorite meal?
So that would be a bighorn sheep, because I've shot one in my life. But if you can't get bighorn, and you probably can't, then a moose roast. I would bring it to room temperature, slather it in high-grade olive oil, Montreal steak seasoning, sear it in an ultra-hot cast iron pan, and then put it in the barbecue for just barely as long as it needs to be. Definitely keep it rare and then rest it in tin foil, slice it thin. My kids, my friends, even people that say they hate venison, they won't eat wild game meat, vacuum it up. That's my favorite way to prepare game meat.
Okay, so what time's dinner and when do you want us there? What can we bring? This sounds awesome.
6 o'clock most evenings.
There you go. All right, last question, and then we're going to let you go, Joseph. What is the one piece of gear that is always in your pack? Your favorite go-to?
Can I count binocular?
You can if you want. Sure. Tell us what your binos look like.
I'd be wearing that, but a high quality ranging binocular, something with a rangefinder. My go-to, I use a lot of them with great results, but as a Swarovski EL range. As far as in my pack,
let's say let's enhance that question a little. So on your adventure hunts, like you're flying for moose and stuff like that in Alaska, there's got to be something in there that's like, oh boy, I wouldn't want to leave home without that.
I'll tell you one that has saved my life, even though I don't usually end up using it, and that's crampons. Lightweight crampons in a rubber, like I call them bikini crampons, right? They've got a little steel mesh or teeth in the bottom, and you just stretch them over your standard hunting boots. I'm 99% sure my life saved by a pair of those on an Idaho bear hunt in the Frank Church River No Return Wilderness. And I've used them in several other hunts where I very well could have fallen and got all busted up if I hadn't had them on. So it's unusual. It's not your compass or your hunting knife or matches, right? But it's an item that can, in certain situations, be absolutely crucial, not just to success, but to survival.
Yep, I would agree. Yeah, that's something I haven't carried yet, and I'm definitely putting them in. One of our guys, just good buddy of ours, Paul Chambers, he commented on that and then also offered up baby wipes as another go-to.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Once you've used baby wipes, it's hard to live without them. It's a dad trick.
Yeah, exactly.
On the note of those crampons, if I can just throw this out there real quick, just got back from New Zealand with Adam and Brenda Weatherby, and she had never used crampons. Adam had his. He got his after seeing me use them on a bear hunt in Montana together. And we were really struggling to keep our footing climbing those New Zealand Alps for tar and chamois. He put them on Brenda's boots, and she said she felt like a spider going up the wall. It changed dramatically, her comfort level going through really dicey places.
Yeah, for sure. No, I could see it. Actually, I just saw Gritty on one of the new Gritty films that just came out, the last episode of them on a moose hunt. And Lampers was using them on, I believe he was using them on his Crocs, put them on his Crocs to walk down a creek. Right?
That's awesome.
You think about, Crocs are great for creek crossing, but boy, you get some of the algae and stuff on those rocks, and
for sure,
it's a game changer.
No doubt.
Well, my friend, this is we just crested an hour, about an hour and 10 minutes or so, and I want to respect your time and kind of wind things up here. Thank you very much for doing this tonight. It's been an absolute blast, and I'd like just to ask, where can our audience find you?
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. This has been a lot of fun, my friend. So the best place to find me is the Backcountry Hunting podcast. I host that. New episode drops at midnight every Thursday night. So it's ready to go when you wake up Friday mornings. And we cover a lot of technical stuff, cartridges, rifles, shooting skills, as well as hunt stories, some international travel, but it really has a focus on DIY and using gear, getting the most out of your gear, and skills. So anyway, that's the best place. And then in magazines, Petersen's Hunting, I do a column and a lot of features. Shooting Times, I do the vintage gun column and a feature pretty much every issue. RifleShooter magazine, I'm the hand loading editor. And then in all the Guns and Ammo special interest publications, these are the ones you find just on the newsstand at your grocery store. They're not the periodical you subscribe to. But things like Precision Rifle Shooter and Red Dot Magazine, Carry Magazine, AR-15, some of those you may not get in Canada, but for your listeners here in the States, you can find those pretty commonly.
Okay.
And then also YouTube, my son, William, he's just a young sprout, but he's pretty savvy with YouTube, and he has started a little YouTube channel, the Backcountry Hunting Podcast on YouTube. Would love to have you join there, subscribe and follow along, as well as I make guest appearances on Ron Spomer Outdoors YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you can add Spike Camp to your list of, appearances. So
absolutely.
I would love to get you back on and talk about the vintage calibers one night. We'll do an hour of that if you're into it. We'll touch base in a few months and compare notes, but we have a lot of interest on that one as well. So anyway,
I love that.
Once again, Joseph, thank you very, very much. And just want to throw a shout out to our members who joined us tonight. If you happen to miss the episode, obviously nobody will hear that, but it'll be on the podcast platforms, and we'll be on YouTube as well. So thanks again, everybody. Have a good night.